Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. In tonight's video, is going to be covering Warlock, the state of Warlock in patch 10.1 on PTR. We are getting very close to 10.1 hitting retail servers, but I think there's a little bit of time to give feedback on a few smaller things, tier bonuses, things that can be buffed, things that can be tuned or changed, and hopefully improve the gameplay of Warlock before the patch actually launches. So this video tonight will be on all of that. Now, like always, week awards, odds, and profiles, links down below. Twitch and Discord will offer free for you guys. And I also want to mention that the 10.1 Warlock PTR spreadsheet is indeed now live on Patreon for the tier 3 Fail Guard rank or higher. Gets early access to that if you're interested. Should be a link up here as well down below in the description if you're looking at supporting a Patreon. And yeah, let's just jump right into it, honestly. All right, so getting into a couple general class tree changes here. There are two that I want to highlight. I might be forgetting one or two, but these are the big ones that don't require a lot of changes. And the first one is in the class tree, but it involves Demonology, and the second one affects every spec. The first one that is Demonology specific, I would say, is Sargerai Technique. Mentioned this when the talent first came out. I think it's a cool talent. I mean, it buffs Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul and Incinerate. Incinerate's very relevant for Demonology. Drain Soul's sort of relevant for Affliction. Shadow Bolt is not relevant for Demonology, like, at all. So I have logs from testing last night. Here is our Khazara kill from Normal Avarice last night. Looking at my damage breakdown, Shadow Bolt was a whopping 1.14%, which is also being buffed by the talent, because I was playing it. Demon Bolt, however, is looking to be about a 3.4% damage, portion of our damage, right? Now, if you go to a Destro kill here, for example, let me try and find one. I believe we played Destro on Amalgamation Chamber. For example, Incinerate is 18%. Right? And we didn't play any Aff in here, but Drain Soul is, I think, around 10 or 12%. What I'm getting at is that this talent is very, very, very irrelevant when it comes to playing it as Demonology. You still can play it if you're looking for a damage increase. It's very, very minuscule, but I think it's much better suited to make Sargerai Technique actually buff Demon Bolt instead of Shadow Bolt. It's not going to, you know, propel Demon Bolt to being a main source of damage and being too OP or anything, but it would make it feel like it's actually relevant. Because at this point, they buff Shadow Bolt / Drain Soul for Affliction, Incinerate for Destruction, both relevant, you know, spells for their own specs, and then you have Demonology with Shadow Bolt, and it really should be Demon Bolt. We cast a lot of Demon Bolts through Demonic Knowledge procs, Demonic Core procs, all the above. You're swimming in Demon Bolt procs, and at the same time, it would synergize well with our new two-piece that increases Demon Bolt damage. It wouldn't make it OP to a level of needing to nerf the two-piece at all, looking at Demon Bolt, but it'd be a nice, I guess, enjoyment fix. It would be enjoyable. I don't know how to word it, but it feels gross being Shadow Bolt. So there's that. Number two in the general tree here, and this is one that I think everybody can agree on needs to have some kind of reining in, and that is Inquisitor's Gaze. This is still bad. Inquisitor's Gaze. So Inquisitor's Gaze needs to be reeled in somehow. Now, this spell's gone through a handful of changes. I actually don't mind where it's at. I think it's sort of cool, I guess. It's fine-ish. The thing is, though, is that it used to be a permanent effect that would last for an hour. Like Arcane Familiar. It would spawn and just do damage. Permanently. It would be a constant source of damage, which is why the Aeronog ring was good for every Warlock spec. When they made this a random proc, like a trinket, it made the ring very bad for Affliction. Still okay for Destro and Demo, but the main thing is that it became RNG. And if you pull up the logs from last night, to a similar extent, well, not to a similar extent, but either way, let's take a look at Fel Barrage damage from, we had two Warlocks in our fight. So, Fel Barrage damage, let's pull this up. This is, let's go to Khazara. We'll go through here. Because the swings you get between two Warlocks with Fel Barrage RNG are actually absurd. So starting here, Fel Barrage, Khazara, looking relatively even. You know, 246, 225, about the same procs, all that stuff, not too bad. Assault Izakali, about the same for the most part. Long fight, overtune, not a big deal. Rashok, a bit more skewed towards me. Okay, it did about, you know, 20% more damage on my end of the spectrum here. Then you get to Amalgamation Chamber, and I just had twice the amount of procs and did 500k more damage than him due to pure RNG. But if you keep going, let's see. Forgotten Experiments, opposite way. He dealt 250k more than me because it procced more, right? You have Vigilant Steward, very even. And then you once again, do we have... I don't think we have Echo of Notharian logged here. Let me see if we can find it. Yes, Echo of Notharian, where we had the opposite, where his dealt basically 600k more than mine due to extra procs. I don't mind the ability. I think it's sort of fine-ish where it's at, but it needs to likely just be like brought in, like just reeled in, have bad luck protection built in. And honestly, like the best way to fix this is likely just to make it an hour buff again, make it a permanent source of damage, and have it just like nerf the overall damage, obviously, make it a permanent source of damage, tune it to the point where it's relevant, where it's like 4-ish% of your damage, maybe 5, and make it a permanent effect again. It'd be fine. There's no problems there. I liked it more when it was permanent. When it became a proc, it was still fine-ish, but the RNG in this thing is way too wild. It's way too excessive. I've seen parses. A few weeks ago, I beat Muffin on Taros. He got 3 power infusions. I got 0. But you know what? My eyeball was 9% of my damage overall. His was 2%. So we're all hoping for power infusions. What we should really hope for, though, is Spell Barrage damage and not power infusion, because you get lucky and Spell Barrage well, ends up being a pretty good bit of your damage. So I guess we could very briefly mention Summon Soulkeeper as well. The ability feels better after the buffs. We played with it for a while when it came to Mythic Plus in 10.0.7 when they increased the damage of the ability. But the problem is, like, I feel like when I'm playing Destro or Demo or Aff, there's more relevant things that I can do with my time casting spells than casting Summon Soulkeeper. Yes, it does damage. It's a very small ground-placed effect, however, where tanks don't like Guillotine. They hate Soulkeeper, and they hate it worse than Guillotine. If there's a world where they can pull out of it, they're gonna pull out of the Soulkeeper placement thing on the ground. It's a stationary effect you can't double down on, like casting multiple times, like Rain of Fire. If they made the ability instant cast, it wouldn't be too OP, I don't think, but it would make quality of life with Summon Soulkeeper a lot better. And I don't think it would be OP. So I guess one final point, here's the round placed effect as well. It's pretty small. Tanks love pulling out of these things. If you could make the actual ability instant cast, I think it would be a lot better. Going into a pack, just throw it down, or if you get into the pack, start your rotation a bit, then throw it down in the middle of it. It feels fine. When I'm cycling Hand of Gul'dans for implosions, or I'm casting a million Rain of Fires, or I'm just, spamming Seed, it feels bad stopping that and going, hey, here's a 1 second cast of Summon Soulkeeper. It's going to pulse for 8 seconds, and they might pull out of it. So that's the final point as far as general points are concerned. Inquisitor's Gaze, find some way to reel in the RNG of it, maybe make it a permanent hour effect again. Summon Soulkeeper, would love seeing it be instant cast, and please make Sorcery Technique buff Demon Bolt for Demonology and not Shadow Bolt. Now, when it comes to Demonology Feedback, there's actually not a whole lot here that needs to, I think, be changed. Demo Tier feels great. It's good damage-wise, great rotationally. It feels really good to play with. There are 2 things I want to hit on, and they are Umbral Blaze and Pact of the Imp Mother. Now, I received a lengthy DM from somebody who does a lot of theory crafting and work on Warlocks, telling me that Pact of the Imp Mother at rank 2 out of 2 is bugged. I thought it was during beta. It might have been fixed, but it looks like he's confirmed that it is bugged again at rank 2 out of 2. I haven't done my own testing with it. I'm going to take his word for it. Probably needs to be looked at. But putting the rank 2 out of 2 bug aside, so if you're playing a build like this, which is going to be Immutable Hatred, Reign of Tyranny, what looks to be sort of mostly your single target build heading in the next patch, you've got a floater point here. You've got 4, 5, 9 points spent here. You've got 1 left. Now, this last point can go into Fell Covenant, into Portal, Sack Souls, Pact, up here in Umbral Blaze. This is not good anymore in single target. But your best option across the board, or in single target, is another Portal. Just playing this for what it does. No Pit Lord, no Nerds Wolves or anything. Just for the raw damage that it brings. But there are settings where you might like want to not play Portal, with it being a 3-minute cooldown or for whatever reason. And at that point, Imp Mother's your next best option. But it's about a 2k DPS loss over playing Portal, which puts you in a pretty awkward spot. So I do think that Pact of the Imp Mother could be buffed to maybe 10%. I think there's some wiggle room there. I haven't run the math on it. I'm not sure. But, I mean, I feel like there's some wiggle room. 8% and 16%, which could be bugged, feels pretty subpar. And while it's a really cool ability, it's not chosen in many settings. Imps it has not chosen any of them, to be honest. Imps have been buffed substantially over the past few weeks and months and things. They're the main source of your damage, but having that element of semi-controlled RNG impact the Imp Mother feels really good. You spawn 6 extra imps building into a tyrant. It feels great, more damage. It just feels fun to play with. But I think in its current form, at 8%, it just feels a little lower than it should be. And once again, if rank 2 is bugged, that needs to be looked into because it, well. might be bug. Now, the other point here is actually going to be Umbral Blaze, and I'm going to play a build like this, I suppose. Typically, you end up playing Portal and or something else, but I want to put 2 points of Umbral Blaze just to show where it's at currently damage-wise. Now, this is an ability. I actually don't mind it. I think it's sort of cool. It gives more of a single target identity to the right side of the tree here, but unfortunately, I think the proc rate's way too low. At rank 2 out of 2 is a 15% chance. That feels like it should be a rank 1%, like 15 and 30. And even with it procs, the damage is just abysmal. It is very, very low compared to where it needs to be for it to be a competitive talent in single target. Now, it would need substantial buffs to be relevant, but it is extremely irrelevant at this point. So hopefully, maybe we can get that changed. Looking at it in combat here, so heading into this, keep in mind, Umbral Blaze is RNG, a 15% chance to proc whenever you cast Hand to Gul'dan. It does not stack. If it's stacked, that'd be pretty cool as well. Like a max of 2 stacks, doubling the damage if need be, to not overlap or override previous Umbral Blazes. So let's get into this here briefly. I'll open up. We're not playing Portal. We're not playing Portal here, but it should be a relatively similar Ring of Tyranny opener. So, gonna Power Siphon, gonna build into this here. What pet do I have at my imp? Let's get the actual pet out. There we go. Let's go into this. Cool. Let's go. Bang, bang. We're gonna go Grimoire, cast a Shadow Bolt. We're going to go Vile Fiend. I'm gonna just cast Dogs here and Bolt. We're gonna lose our procs. It's not a big deal. There's a Bolt. We're gonna go Hand, Bolt, Hand again. Looking for an Umbral Blaze proc here. I haven't seen one yet, but I might have missed one initially. That's Tyrant. Well, Demonic Strength. Hoping for an Umbral Blaze proc. Let's see if we can find one here. There's one right there. So 10k damage. Ticking, ticking, ticking. This is going to expire. You can see, when I pull up the meter here, Umbral Blaze is not even on the meter. It is way down here. 54k, which it procs again here. To be fair, we'll give it a second or two and see where it goes, because Tyrant did just come out and crank, or imps are catching up a bit here. But the more I've tested with this talent, I like it. Like, I don't mind it, but it just feels like it's drastically undertuned comparatively to where it could be, or realistically should be, for it to be relevant in single target. It's below, I mean, it's below Hand to Gul'dan splash damage. It's below my Vile Fiend's Bile Spit, which is it's very, very low, right? It's dropping even lower and lower, 19, 20, and it's not just the raw damage, right? It's also the fact that it has a low proc rate. We've gotten, I believe, 2 procs. We've gotten 2 or 3 procs, over the course of a minute and a half here. So I think increasing the proc rate, maybe like almost doubling it, making it like baseline 15 at rank 1, maybe 30 or 25-ish at rank 2, and adjusting the damage so that it's also a good bit higher could make Umbral Blaze competitive in single target. There's an element of RNG there, but increasing the proc rate would help with that. I think it would make it'd be a cool talent to play. It would also add more single target identity to the right side of the tree here, which it has some in Grimoire and things, but you could always use a little bit more. So getting into some Affliction feedback points here, a lot of it just revolves around the actual tier bonus. Both the damage that is increased, I guess your Singularity / Violent increased in the 2-piece, just probably not being enough, and their interaction with the cooldown reduction and infirmity value and all that. Now, I have actual sims here looking at Affliction's 2-piece. Sims are working, you guys didn't know that. So these sims here are 10.1 PTR stuff. Here is Affliction with 0 tier at all whatsoever. The 2-piece looks to be about roughly a 2.8% increase in single target, and the 4-piece looks to be about a 9% increase, or roughly a 6% increase over the 2-piece, or 9% over having no tier whatsoever. Now, I feel like this might be a little bit on the lower end. I think Blizz shoots for like 10 to 11%. I could be wrong. Somewhere around there either way. But the thing here, so I want to pull up this HTML report and show you the damage that Singularity or Violent does here. We are playing Violent in this sim, and Violent is doing, let's see where it's at here, roughly 3.7%. So you can expect somewhere around like 6.2, 6.3%, I'd assume, roughly, with it being a 60% increase in damage, roughly, depending on RNG and procs and all that. But it's not just that. Now, basically doubling the damage of a 3.7% ability isn't like the end all be all. It's not incredibly OP or anything, which I mean, yeah, it sort of makes sense. Now, you also have the CDR baked into both Violent and PS, being 33 seconds for Singularity and 25 for Violent, right? So the thing here is that Having these cooldown timings makes casting Dark Glare at the 2-minute mark, if you're still playing Dark Glare next patch, which we'll see where it goes, awkward. So I have timings here as well. Now, the interesting thing here is that looking at these timings, so these numbers here, ignore this. These timings here means that you're not holding Singularity, you're not holding Vile Taint, you're casting them on cooldown, and the 2-minute plus mark here is where you're going to Dark Glare again, right? So let's say you're PSing on pull. You don't PS or Vile Taint at 0, but for simplicity's sake, we did that. It's typically cast around like the 8-second mark, but simplicity's sake, here, okay? Now, Singularity gives roughly a 13-second Infirmity window, because it lasts 13 seconds roughly. Infirmity being the 4-piece 10% damage increase to the mob. Vile Taint gives 10 seconds. Now, that's outside of any Dark Glare extensions. I didn't factor in Dark Glare extensions here either, because once again, it doesn't really matter either way. But the thing here, let's go. Where'd my notepad go? There it is. So this is what basically when you're casting PS or casting Vile Taint, raw duration-wise into the fight. And this here is the total amount of Infirmity duration you have over the course of the encounter by casting these at these timestamps. So PS gives you 13 seconds of Infirmity. 1 PS cast, 13. 2, 26. 3, 39. It's math, right? So now the goal here is to basically reach the 2-minute mark in these, whether you're looking at PS or Vile Taint, which is where you're going to Dark Glare again. Now, like I said, basically popping PS on cooldown and popping Vile Taint on cooldown gives you your Dark Glare at right around the 212 mark, which if you added 8 seconds for your opener and things, about the 220 mark for playing Singularity, and about the 212 mark for playing Vile Taint. So you're sitting on your Dark Glare for a matter of, I don't know, roughly 12 to 15 seconds. You factor in just, holding PS for a few seconds for whatever reason. And same thing for Vile Taint. Roughly about a 210, 212-ish Dark Glare. Is it the end of the world? No, not a big deal. But it feels sort of bad sitting on a cooldown for any duration of time if you don't really need to, if you're not holding it for a certain point in the fight. Now, you have the option of holding your PS here for your Dark Glare, or holding your Vile Taint here for your Dark Glare again, but you lose an Infirmity window, which lasts 13 seconds for PS and 10 here. So basically, when you're back to the point where you're casting your Dark Glare at 212 for PS and at 205 for Vile Taint, you get a minute, 10, 20, 30, 60 seconds, 1 minute of raw Infirmity value playing Vile Taint. You get a minute 5 of raw value playing Phantom Singularity. Now, once again, this is a very minor change. I think it would make the playstyle of AF, by not having to hold Dark Glare, feel much, much, much better. Just make Singularity's cooldown 30, not 33. Make it 30. It'd be fine. It would go 0, 30, 60. What? Basically 0, half minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. Perfect. Works out great. No problems. You're not holding Dark Glare. They both come up right at the same time to a similar extent. If you made Vile Taint like 20, I think 21 is the ratio you need to basically catch all your agonies in AoE. I think Blizz wants that to not be a thing by just being able to permanently cast Vile Taint over and over and over in AoE. If that's the case, then yes, I'd love it. That would be incredible. It'd be awesome. The baseline duration of agony is 18, right? Yeah. But if you pandemic agony, it'll be like 24, 23. I believe 21 is what you need for Vile Taint to be permanently refreshable, I think. Or agony to be permanently refreshable in AoE with Vile Taint. I could be wrong, though, either way. The point of this is like, that'd be great. I think Blizz wants to avoid that for a skill ceiling thing, just too simple. I don't know. If that's the case, hey, sure, make Vile Taint 20 seconds like it used to be. Because at 20, you could do it on beta all the time when it was 20 seconds, not 30. That felt incredible. If that's on the table, would be insane. To be able to permanently refresh agony in AoE by casting Vile Taint only, and not having to go back through and go agony, 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 agony. And then when you do all that, have it come off cooldown 2 seconds later. But the thing I want to get at here, either way, if you make PS half a minute, 30 seconds, if you make Vile Taint 23 seconds instead of 25, it makes them both line up basically at the exact same point where Dark Glare comes back up. There's no 205, it's basically 158 or whatever, and it's exactly 2 minutes. I don't think it wouldn't be a large increase at all in damage. I really don't think so. But it would feel so much better. It would feel like Demonology's bonus when you had Grimoire before the extension and after when it was fixed. So That's one big point. The second point here is sort of fast. I mentioned it a little bit already, honestly, but I think that you could very easily buff Affliction's 2-piece from 60% increase in damage to Vile Taint and Singularity to somewhere around like 100. I don't think it would be that big of a deal. We saw Sims a minute ago, and Vile Taint accounts for, I believe, right around, I think it was 3.7% of our damage. So you're looking at like a 6.8, I guess more, like 7.2-ish% of our damage being Vile Taint based. But I don't think, with looking at where Aff's 2-piece is currently sitting in Sims, being a 2.8% damage increase overall, I think there's plenty of room. There's certainly some leeway for you to just say, hey, you know what, let's, honestly, let's just make the damage increase more relevant. Once again, let's make it 100%. Make it 90%. I don't think it would be that big of a deal, because while you are casting Vile Taint on a shorter cooldown and things, it's not to the point where Vile Taint is way too much damage, right? You're still playing Vile Taint in single target, but if you want Aff's 2-piece to feel more relevant, I guess feel impactful, feel good in single targets, you probably need to increase the damage of it. Because sitting at a whopping, I don't know, what's it at now? 7.4%. I don't think there's any real issue making it, 9.5%, 10%. Aff's already the lowest spec out of Demo, Destro, and Aff due to the nerfing it got recently. I think bumping that up to 90%, even 100, would go a long way for the 2-piece, and or maybe reduce the duration of, PS and Vile Taint more. Or sorry, reduce the cooldown of them more. If given the option of one or the other, you certainly want to take, I think, the cooldown reduction being reduced even more than the damage increase. I think you can basically do both of them without any real issues. And the last thing for Affliction here is a pretty fast one, and that is in reference to the nerfs that came in about a month ago, and the nerf that Dark Glare took. Now, up until that nerf, I guess for the few days we had Aff being good in patch 10.0.7, there were two builds you could play. One was basically this, which we called Malevolent Visionary. This build played Soul Rot, both builds played Vile Taint, but it played Soul Rot and it played Malevolent Visionary. This made your Dark Glare last longer and do more damage in single target. Dark Glares felt like a non-existent cooldown for probably 3 expansions now. It does very little damage at all, and even in 0.05, we weren't even playing Dark Glare. We were playing a build with no cooldown because of how subpar Dark Glare was. They buffed Dark Glare in 0.07 or in 0.7 to basically do more damage in single target. You gain more damage based on the number of dots on your target, but it didn't gather resources or harvest dots from surrounding mobs. It was whatever target you were hitting, it dealt damage based off of that. It was a buff to Dark Glare's damage. TLDR, they ended up nerfing it. I believe, I would assume it was due to how much damage it was doing in AoE, but that build was playing Grim Reach. You just nerf Grim Reach at that point. You don't nerf Dark Glare's baseline damage because that just invalidated this build. So like, I ran a sim here. This is Haunted Soul, and this is Malevolent Visionary. Now, I believe the Dark Glare nerf was about 600 to 800 DPS off of Dark Glare. It might have been a bit more or a bit less, but Haunted Soul was this build here. Now, Haunted Soul plays just this. It is the full Haunted Soul row. You play Dark Glare still, no Soul Rot, and this is just what you do. It is honestly a relatively boring version of Aff. You just maintain dots. That's all you really do. You hit Dark Glare for very little damage over the course of the fight. It just feels sort of bad. Looking at Dark Glare's damage in the breakdown here, it's sitting at, where's Dark Glare? It is, it's somewhere in here. It is at 3.1% of your damage. And this damage profile is exceptionally flat, barring the opener here with Lust and Potion. It is just, you have these minor windows here with Vile Taint. This is also your 4-piece giving you a damage increase here. But the profile is very, very flat. There's not many cooldowns here. Not many spikes, I should say, when cooldowns are coming in. Compared to other specs, right? Compared to Demo or whatever. Which, when it comes to a rating prog kind of setting, toolkits that have those on-demand burst CDs, like Tyrant, are often much more valued in the majority of prog due to being able to say, hey, there's an ad spawning here, blow it apart. Tyranting an ad versus Dark Glaring an ad is like two completely different things. And unfortunately, the baseline Dark Glare nerf sort of broke the Malevolent Visionary build. This build, like here, has a lot more peaks and valleys in its actual damage profile. Pulling up this build here, it's not like necessarily like what Demo's like, but you can see here, there's a peak here when you Dark Glare, because you're playing number 1 Soul Rot, you're playing Vile Taint, which you can pair with Soul Rot for more dots during your Rapture window, and number 2, Dark Glare feels like a cooldown again. You have your cooldowns again, right? So I rarely ever say we should revert nerfs. But I think this nerf needs to be reverted, and they need to hit Grim Reach. If the issue was Dark Lair being too strong in AoE, which I think it was most likely, I would love to see the Dark Lair nerf that we got a month ago reverted, because they nerfed baseline Dark Lair IV damage and just nerf the modifier on Grimreach. That'll make it not as strong in AoE, but it will still retain the Malevolent Visionary, Soul Rot, Bile Taint build, which honestly, this build was a few hundred DPS behind Haunted Soul anyways, but this build was leagues more fun to play, so much more fun to play. It was a better PI recipient. It wasn't like Demo with PI, but it was so much more fun to play. Your cooldowns mattered, and you could actually burst. The other version of AF, like Malevolent Visionary, burst to 210k. This version, 170, 180, and you have no burst besides that. You just slowly climb and sustain for the whole fight. It is relatively bland and boring versus being very exciting every minute with Soul Rot, and every 2 with Malevolent Visionary and Dark Lair. And when it comes to destruction, the spec that's on everybody's mind, because Destro has been in an odd spot when it comes to mobility. Destro is currently the highest simming spec in the game by about 4,000 DPS. It beats every spec in the game by about 4%. But the problem is that Destro is still not played in many settings, and that's number 1 due to Vault being not a very Destro-friendly raid, and number 2, the fact that you just can't move when playing Destro. Now, I have sims here. These are AF sims. Here is Destro. Here is Destro's 0-piece, 2-piece, and 4-piece. Now, once again, the tier set is... It's based around CDF. Whether you like CDF or not, it's where it's at. If an overhaul's on the table, we'll see what happens. But I think with the patch being this close, it's likely not going to happen. So I do think that with the two-piece and 4-piece being in this state, let me pull this up here at the same time, I don't think the 4-piece is getting much better than where it's currently at. It's a baseline universal damage increase across the board to all your spells. I will say the 2-piece feels a bit underwhelming. It's about a 2.9% increase in single target, which is higher than I've seen. I've seen it be about 2.3 to 2.4 playing CDF and Raging Demon Fire. And when it comes to the 4-piece, you're looking at about a 7%, about an 8% increase. I wouldn't mind seeing both bumped up a little bit damage-wise, but the thing is, Destro's already very, very high when it comes to raw damage and single target. So there's a bit of an issue there. Now, when it comes to the 4-piece, or sorry, when it comes to AoE though, these are the numbers for Destro's 2-piece and 4-piece playing CDF. Now, this build's not even playing Raging Demon Fire. This is just CDF, and besides that, the full-on Rain of Fire spam AoE build. The 2-piece is going to be a whopping 1.5% DPS increase, and the 4-piece is going to be about a 6.3% increase. So it is worth casting CDF and AoE, but I mean, it is not like it is a massive increase across the board, not where you would think it would be as far as a tier set bonus is concerned. I think the solution to this, the 4-piece can maybe use a little bit of a bump here and there with damage, maybe like 8% to 9%, something like that. But I feel like what needs to be done for the 2-piece is likely to just increase the proc rate of it. You could increase the damage as well. It's sort of a wash, like a proc rate increase, and or this is the actual AoE build here as well. Just playing CDF, not playing Raging. Raging seems lower than playing just CDF. You could just straight up say, hey, we'll increase the damage of the 2-piece, like the embers that cleave from CDF and all that. But I feel like increasing the proc rate does the same thing essentially, but it's also more exciting. It just feels better and just universally becomes, I feel like, more applicable across the board. Yes, CDF is very stationary. I understand CDF might not be everyone's favorite. I understand. I'm just saying I'm making do with what we have, and it might be a CDF kind of bonus. So I think the 2-piece could likely use a buff when it comes to just like pure single target damage. I mean, pulling this up here, CDF's looking like to be roughly, this is actual Channel Demon Fire here. The single target build's playing CDF and Raging Demon Fire. The actual tier set is here at 2.8%, right about somewhere in here. There you go. That's the 2-piece bonus right there at 2.8%. So I wouldn't mind seeing this bumped up by like 40-ish% proc rate wise, which would put it somewhere around like 5%. Might be a bit high. Maybe bump it up like 30%, putting it somewhere like the 4.5% range, which is maybe we're a decent spot for a 2-piece bonus value overall, but gotta see where that goes. And the final thing for destruction here is, unsurprisingly, Destro's lack of spells you can cast in the move, being a very stationary spec, all of the above. Now, We've gone a whole patch cycle on PTR basically with no destro changes as far as mobility is concerned. I would assume at this point there's no KJC coming. There's no cast while moving clause being added to anything. I want to say I don't think adding a cast while moving clause to CDF is the answer. You're not holding CDF. You're not playing CDF if you're not playing this tier bonus, number one. Number two, if you're playing the tier bonus, you're not going to say, okay, it's off cooldown. It's a 9% damage increase or 8% if I hit it, but I'm going to hold it in case I got to move for the mechanic coming in 10 seconds. You're going to pop it on cooldown. The stars might align every once in a while where, hey, you're moving while casting CDF off cooldown, but you're not going to hold it for anything. I don't think it really solves many problems in the first place. I think if you're looking at smaller changes heading into 10.1 that can be made at this point still, I think the best change is to make Madness's duration, just double it. Just make it 10 seconds or something, man. Funny enough, Madness's duration is 5 seconds. It's shorter than what Dread Touch was before it got buffed. Dread Touch was 6, and now it's 8. Madness is shorter than all of those, and it was buffed from 4 to 5 in beta. I think at this point, while it wouldn't allow Destro to cast spells or moving or anything, having the option to go, all right, I'm casting spells here and there. I can build some shards here. I can go, all right, I'm going to bolt. We can bolt. All right, bolt. Mechanics out. I can move. I can do the mechanic, whatever. It's over. Cool. Bolt again. And Madness is still rolling. That would indeed help Destro sustain more damage when movement is factored into certain fights, because RNG is RNG. I do think that the key to unlocking Destro's movement likely revolves, or I guess involves Burn to Ashes. I think it makes the most sense. BTA already increases Incinerate damage. It stacks to 6. I don't know how they'd work it. Make it you can cast Incinerate on the move if you have stacks of this thing. Cut the stack count. I don't know. Like you're always overcapping on stacks of Burn to Ashes. You never drop below 1 stack, like ever at this point, with it being, you know, a 6 stack max, right? Maybe it's a 10.15 thing, maybe a 10.2 thing, maybe we're just, you know, a stationary turret forever. I don't know. But I think if we're looking for a smaller Band-Aid-esque fix to Destro's movement, lack of mobility this patch, just make Madness 8, 9, 10 seconds. Just make it a buff that you can just sort of maintain for now. If you got to fix it in 10.15 or 10.2, do that. But we're close enough to launch where you need something. Destro's the highest simming spec in the game by like 5%, and it's still not being played in really any setting, barring Amalgamation Chamber. It's a core fundamental mechanical issue, and while Madness's duration being double wouldn't fix that totally, it would help. I think the best change for Destro right now, if you can do it, is make Madness 8, 9, 10 seconds and just go from there. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully the video wasn't too long, and hopefully it covered most of the things that I guess need to be covered for Warlock heading into 10.1. Like I mentioned, I don't expect any large changes now. Chances are high we have Grim Feast as a capstone. We have 2 capstones in our class tree. Chances are high we're not getting Grand Warlock's design moved around. We're likely not getting any Infernal buffs here and there. We'll see. Infernal is sort of in between. Maybe some buffs. I don't know. But either way, smaller changes like the Madness duration increase. Tier bonuses like AF being buffed, Destro being buffed, things like that. The smaller ones that can be tweaked and tuned with numbers. Those are applicable. Those can still happen before the patch actually hits. So we'll see where it goes. Overall, I think Lock's in a pretty good state heading into Aberrus. We'll see what tuning brings over these next few weeks. But Demo looks good. Destro looks good-ish. And AF looks okay-ish. It was over nerfed, but, you know, is what it is. So let me know what you guys think of these, I guess, short, briefish feedback points in the comment section below. Any questions, put them in there as well, and I will be sure to get back to you like always. Once again, week Warcraft add-ons and profiles, links down below to Twitch and Discord for free for you guys. And like usual, I want to give one final shout out to my patrons. Guys, for all support on Patreon, thank you a million times. I really appreciate it. Once again, the 10.1 PTR Warlock spreadsheet is indeed now live on Patreon. For the tier 3 Felguard rank or higher. If you're looking to support it on Patreon, should be a link up here as well as down below. So we have less than a month until patch 10.1 hits. Even with tuning coming, I think Lock might get tuned a little bit. Maybe some positives, maybe some net gains, maybe some net losses here and there. It might be warranted. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. By the way, even looking at things to come potentially, this raid feels like a good Warlock raid. A lot of patchwork bosses, a lot of single target stat cleave profiles. Demo can do great at that. A good bit of single target. Destro's good at it. Can't really move, but I mean, Demo's good too. And at the same time, AF can sort of be a jack of all trades at times. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. So I think it's a good time to be a Warlock if you're heading into patch 10.1, with Lock being your class of choice. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.